Chapter 6. Lost in Smoke. Magus was never alone. The hive was ever present, always thought for him, and it used his mind to begin the search for their next world. He was to chart their next course even as the last of his kind perished in their mental agony. Magus and the other minders worked without rest to meet the hive's unquenchable need to grow and feed. Magus's people had the best map of the galaxy's spiral arm the hive had ever found. A world with a rich biological zone was already charted in it, and the hive didn't waste a moment in using his homeworld's resources to construct its next fleet. Speed was the only consideration for the journey. The individual components of the hive could even survive as a biofilm, so nothing elaborate was needed. Magus remained in a maker's trance for months, and proved himself foremost among the minders tasked with construction. He improved much of the hive's inherited space technology. They had arrived with a crude fleet driven by ramjets and solar sails. His race had never had the desire to leave their own world, but their scientists used a faster design in their exploration probes that utilized graviton harpoons. He shared the technology with the hive for their new fleet. They would now be able to travel at near half light speed towards their next target. Now that the planet was subjugated, all efforts shifted towards the launch, the start of a journey that would take 1,000 years. The hive in motion was a sight to behold. Every scrap of biomass that could be used took to the sky as an interconnected cloud. His world then shed the hazy pall as it all went into orbit, forming a new ring. Some remnants of the hive serviced the launch and wouldn't be coming, with a group of minders also left behind. After departure, they would supervise the extraction of the final bits of usable life from the planet, and then wait. Magus knew the hive's history, as he knew all things the hive knew. This remnant would never leave the system. They would remain there, wardens of his race's tomb. Perhaps some of the last survivors of the other starfaring races would visit, only to be consumed by the plague they believed they had left behind. But this event was unlikely. Magus's world was destined to revolve silently around its orange star, carrying his people's unvisited silent graves forever. The hive pressed on, and Magus's talents only accelerated them towards their next conquest. Even as he built the fleet, the Alpha Guardian watched him closely. But all she observed was his obedience, as that was all he knew and would know for centuries. His nightmare was just beginning. Officer Bird returned with a sack of burgers and fries from a Foster's freeze. I hardly acknowledged him as he stepped into the room and put the food down on the small table by the window. Both Mindy and I were glued to the TV. You'd think an extraterrestrial showing up would be a good thing, but the U.S. stock market had tanked and trading had been suspended, which was being reported as if this was the key takeaway from the day's news. Air travel in the U.S. had been halted. The screen was dominated by footage of scrambled jets over New York and Washington, D.C., and images of the goddess were brief, as if that part of the news day had already been digested, and now the aftermath was the primary concern. Several brawls had broken out in the streets of the city, although no one could explain why anyone was fighting. Traffic had become gridlocked, and even at that late hour was barely loosening up. The goddess's visit had lasted less than 15 minutes, a flyby as she momentarily lingered, casting her fiery gaze on Gotham with nary a word to either the faithful or faithless. A map showed the path of her flight, taking her over the Manhattan waterfront and a couple of the bridges I had seen in plenty of movies. Again, she flew westward, the sun behind her, with sightings minutes later north of Philadelphia and northwest Maryland. Close enough to D.C. to send up more jets, not that they were able to do anything, and she had departed before their first sortie reached her. Cincinnati and St. Louis both got flyovers. She'd paused several times in random places, some abandoned, some with people. Her flight speed was estimated at well over 900 miles per hour. The last sighting had been near Kansas City. "She's racing the sun," Mindy said. I just nodded and watched the screen. "What's going on?" Camila asked, emerging from the steaming bathroom with her head wrapped in a towel. Neither of us answered, and Camila sat next to Mindy to watch. When a reporter started to repeat what had been said several times before, I flipped stations. Even though the goddess's passing was quick, the effects lingered. People were out with signs or candles or holding hands with their neighbors. Some interviewees were for the goddess, while others called her a devil and false god. The police kept a close eye on a number of militia groups who were armed up and ready to fight. Some wore head-to-toe hazard suits as if sharing the same air would result in some kind of contagion. Helicopters scoured the area of her last sighting southeast of Kansas City. Where do you hide a flying, fiery god? Even a meteorologist on the station said their Doppler radar couldn't track her, as confirmed by other weather reporters from network affiliates. Either she had gone straight up or straight down, or she was untraceable. A military aircraft expert said it was possible she was cruising nap of the earth, or really low to the ground, specifically to avoid detection. But since she was flying over the speed of sound, there should have been a detectable sonic boom. The government kept mum, except for bland encouragements to keep calm. The president was nowhere to be seen. The news raced through a few other items: a shooting at a VA hospital, a catastrophic flood in Bangladesh, and an antibiotic-resistant bacteria outbreak in several countries. Cheery stuff. I grabbed the bag of food and set everything out. We had 6 cheeseburgers and 3 packages of fries. It was barely warm, and Officer Bird had neglected to include any ketchup. I ate, pondering. Officer Taylor woke us early the next morning while it was still dark out. The muscles in my arms, back, shoulders, and legs and butt all hurt. The bug bite on my hand itched. We got dressed. I ran cold water over the bite. It appeared puffy. Neither of the girls had any cream that would do anything besides cover it up, so I left it alone and tried to ignore it. My feet complained when I pulled my boots on. The footwear felt a size too small. I stepped outside. Smoke permeated the air. A thin layer of ash covered everything. "It's gotten worse," I said. Mindy hobbled out, tucking her shirt into her pants. Her boots weren't laced tight. I pointed it out and she retied them. The other girls shuffled out, an all-female zombie flash mob. A group of county workers in the opposite building were also standing around outside their rooms. Yuba County Conservation Corps, according to their vans. "I guess they're on loan from out of town," I said. They must have gotten to the hotel even later than we did. Some of them had coffee and pastries. Officer Bird pulled up in our van. He had with him a pink box of assorted donuts. He set these down atop a knee-high brick wall by our room. He then brought out a bag of store-bought bagels, little containers of cream cheese, and a paper urn of coffee. I got some coffee. Even with half and half, it was nuclear. I readjusted my grip on the cup and grabbed a donut. It was still warm. Heaven. A firefighter drove up and gave our officers instructions on where we were needed. We had more trail to cut. As soon as it became obvious it was time to get in the van, everyone grabbed a few donuts to go until the box was empty. Bethany snagged the bag of bagels. Before Officer Bird got in the vehicle, he leaned in the sliding side door.
"Bethany, could you offer a prayer to the goddess?"
Seeing a big dude like Officer Bird ask that was interesting. Officer Taylor waited patiently in the driver's seat and didn't comment. Something about Officer Bird's demeanor bothered me. He never particularly stood out from the other correctional officers, but now he looked nervous. I didn't think it was the fire. Bethany prayed, and we bowed our heads. We hiked farther than the previous day to get to the hillside we were to clear. It should only have been moderately strenuous, but the smoke burning my lungs made it hard. Now all of us wore the masks, never mind the sweat. Our load was heavier too. Power tools were on the menu, and we each got to carry a weed whacker along with our other tools. One of the firefighters toted a red can of fuel, gas for our tools. "Marching towards a fire with an explosive liquid," I said. "Makes sense." No one laughed. The landscape appeared otherworldly as the sun glowed a sickly brown above us. Officer Bird and one of the firefighters hesitated for several minutes. Their phones weren't working.
"Problem with the GPS," the firefighter said. "But I think we're in the right spot."
After further consultation, they decided to set us to work. We used the trail as a starting point and began clearing either side, cutting down swaths of tall, dead weeds with the weed whackers. The incessant zzzz of the power tools was an odd soundtrack for the apocalyptic scene. I moved uphill one step at a time, swinging my body in arcs. Pebbles and debris thrown up by the weed whacker kept smacking my legs and arms, making me finally glad to have the heavy jumpsuit over my clothes and goggles for my eyes. But the heat became oppressive. By the time I was halfway up the hill, I had the jumpsuit peeled down to my waist. I was bathed in sweat. The smoke had gotten thicker. The wind was up as well, blowing the hot air into my face like an oven. I kept up the pace, focusing on moving ever forward, careful not to slip and slide as I swept the weed whacker in rhythmic patterns. The incessant buzz drowned out everything else. After a while, I let up on the throttle and paused to look around. I didn't see anyone near me. I couldn't see anyone at all. There had been a girl working to either side of me just moments before. The air took on an eerie silence. "Hey!" I shouted. The smoke swirled all around, even behind me, swept up by the wind. It was like a tide of gloom. How had I gotten so far ahead of everyone? Or was I turned around, somehow having trekked up the wrong side of a ridge? The smoke grew darker, a cloud rolling over and above me. The sun was nothing but a smudge. I tried not to panic. The slope I was on was steep and slippery. Staying calm wasn't working. I lowered the weed whacker and pulled the mask down from my mouth. "Hello?" I called again. From somewhere down the hill, I heard a whistle. 3 blasts, silence, and the pattern repeated. I began to descend the hill. The smoke followed me, seeming to get thicker. I worried the whistle would stop, again leaving me stranded. My descent turned into a slide. I abandoned the weed whacker, pushing it away so it wouldn't trip me up. It was a futile effort, though, and I tumbled. With both hands, I tried to claw at the dirt to slow myself. The rocky ground bit at my hands. Finally, I regained my footing. Somewhere in my descent, I had lost my gloves and goggles. I felt an overwhelming sense of relief when I saw my first orange jumpsuit. Everyone was down on the trail staring up at me. I didn't remember the spot. It was as if the lay of the land had changed. Maybe it was the smoke. I was coughing as I recovered enough to straighten my sagging jumpsuit.
"We worried we had lost you,"
Bethany said. Her voice held an unmistakable note of sarcasm. Officer Taylor came over. "Where were you, inmate? Didn't you hear the whistle?" I just shook my head. My limbs trembled. I had skinned up the palms of my hands pretty good coming down the last stretch. Mindy handed me a bottle of water and I drank it down. It soothed my parched throat. "Where's your equipment?" Officer Taylor asked. I shook my head. "I'll go back. I dropped it when I fell." She scanned the hill. "No, we're clearing out. The wind's picked up. It's gotten too thick and we can't reach anyone on the phone or radio." She did a head count. "All right, let's go." The line of girls started back down the trail. For some reason, it felt like a retreat, and we were giving up. I didn't like the feeling. Even the time of day would be a speculation if not for the firefighter with a wristwatch. According to him, it was 3 in the afternoon. I was so tired and frenzied for a drink of water, the fact that I had missed lunch hadn't dawned on me. Everyone was taking off their jumpsuits and crowding around the water coolers. Officer Bird was holding up his phone while the firefighter kept at the radio, but they were having no luck in finding anyone to talk to. All the radio picked up was loud static. Officer Taylor tried the van radio with no success. A small red fire truck approached with its hazard lights blinking. The driver rolled down his window as Officer Bird approached. "Time to clear out," the driver said. "I can't raise the fire chief," Officer Bird said. "Radios and phones are out." "Why?" "I don't know, but this thing is growing and the wind is blowing it this way. Get your crew loaded and follow me." It was an hour driving down the hill with little to see but walls of smoke on either side of the road and the blinking lights of the fire truck in front of us. Wrapped sandwiches were passed out as we drove. I wolfed mine down just to keep my queasy stomach calm. The panic was gone, replaced with general jitters. Had I almost died? Probably not, but the raw emotion of finding myself isolated up on the hill followed by losing control down the slope troubled me. I was stronger than that. We pulled into a large county equipment yard. 3 other fire vehicles were there, along with the van with the boys. Their CEO had them all corralled just outside the van. Some lay on the ground with their heads on their folded gear, clearly exhausted.
Everyone stay put,
Officer Byrd said. Should we even be stopping? I asked.
We're safe,
he said. He and Officer Taylor got out and spoke to one of the boys' COs. A few of the firefighters gathered close in a loose huddle. They all looked troubled and they kept checking their phones. One was working his hand radio. A California Highway Patrol car came rolling in and the patrol officer got out. She joined the group, which appeared eager to hear what she had to say. Their body language told me she didn't have good news. It was stuffy in the van. Bethany opened the side door, but the air from outside provided little relief. I saw the keys had been placed in the front cup holder. I leaned forward and put the keys in the ignition.
What are you doing?
Bethany asked. Checking to see what's up. I turned on the radio. Nothing but static. I clicked through the presets but heard nothing. I did the same on AM but got the same results. I then scrolled through the channels with a knob. The sound level varied, but the static remained. There were no stations to be heard. The radio's broken, Mindy said. Must be, I said. I switched back to the FM channels. How about that? Mindy pointed to the shortwave radio. I didn't know how to use it. Officer Taylor had tried earlier, but I hadn't heard her speaking with anyone. Judging by the lit LED screen, it was powered on. One knob was for volume. I turned it up. A tuning knob moved numbers up and down. All I could hear were odd squeals and tortured electronic sounds. Officer Byrd was coming back. I turned everything off and put the keys back in the cup holder. He didn't notice. He got in the van and paused for a moment to catch his breath. No one said anything.
Shut the door,
he said finally.
We're going back to the hotel.
What's going on? Bethany asked. Officer Taylor returned and started the van. She drove, eyes on the road. Neither CO said anything. I could see Officer Byrd's lips moving as if he were working something out. Chapter 7. Temporary Lodging. The smaller ships housing the hive took a month to come together in high orbit. The component organisms housed themselves within the larger carriers Magus had built to convey them on their journey. As the ships docked, he personally examined each one with the care of a father tending his brood. The check was redundant. He had made no mistakes, and all his automation worked perfectly. With the final pass, the ships were sealed with their precious cargo. He was finished with his work, so he waited. The world below him turned in swirling shades of red. He heard laughter. The sound echoed within his mind. It was so unlike anything he had heard from the Hive or any of their subservient minders and guardians. Each one was allowed enough of their intelligence to accomplish their task, and no more. An emotion would be a waste of energy better spent elsewhere. Yet here was an expression of amusement, and it was directed at Magus. Magus could do little but endure it, and part of him wondered why the Alpha Guardian was allowed such latitude by the Hive. So he stopped waiting. Part of his assignment was to ensure the safety of the Hive during transit. He discovered the Alpha Guardian was now ensconced in the center of the flagship, before any of the other minders had taken their necessary positions. Her being there wasn't part of his design. He checked. His plan had been altered. No other minder was now assigned to the ship. Curious. He conducted himself along the length of the ship. It had no hatch or means of entry. For him to visually inspect the Alpha Guardian and her location in the ship, he would have to dismantle it. Even as the notion crossed his mind, the Hive told him not to. He obeyed. Instantly he discerned not all were completely subsumed by the Hive, because he knew, the Hive knew, yet they did nothing. He understood now the Alpha Guardian was more than just a drone. She had taken pleasure in tricking him by drawing him out of his skin. Her laugh haunted him. In it he heard the mock song that had seduced him. She had been a willing instrument of his world's destruction. Obediently, he finished his inspection. The formation was ready. The hive now waited on him to start their journey. He ensconced himself within the folds of the last ship and sealed himself up inside. Trillions of hive particles nested around him. The hive felt nothing as they launched. Magus just stared into the darkness. Through the network of the hive, the Alpha Guardian reached out and touched him for a moment. The touch was enough. He found himself reliving that fateful night, shedding his skin, reaching out for an intimate moment while knowing it was an impossibility, letting his guard down as he reached out towards the song that would unite him and the unknown female who had chosen him. Then came the pain, and darkness, and separation from everyone he had ever known. The Alpha Guardian laughed again. Magus didn't reply and didn't respond. His own exploration of what constituted his own thoughts was limited. The hive was all, and his mind wouldn't go beyond where the hive allowed. But the hive went dormant after the course was set, and there was nothing to do. Their ships began to accelerate. He wanted to feel nothing too, but she remained at the edges of his thoughts, taunting him with that final memory, replaying it for him, over and over. His race's freedom of shared thought had been their greatest gift and their greatest vulnerability. She had seen deeper within him than anyone ever had, and she was an invader, an alien, a creature with enough power to reach from her own fetters and express her will even in the midst of the hive. The hive never gloated like this. It fed. No one in the hive's history had ever reversed its authority once it had taken hold. Through his efforts, their success was assured. He had improved on their cluster formations, relying on even smaller ships slaved to larger particles that were then formed into the largest vessels. There was less chance of catastrophic failure with his new design. These oversights had cost them large percentages of their numbers during previous voyages. The hive had implemented the plan as if it were of its own origin. The body didn't thank the appendage for completing a task. The Alpha Guardian finally turned her attention elsewhere. Magus provided her no sport, but with nothing else but the blackness of space and the slumbering swarm to occupy him, the laugh lingered in his mind. Officer Bird and Officer Taylor told us to either stay near the van or go sit in the hotel lounge. To the lounge we shuffled. The Best Western Lounge was where they served their complimentary breakfasts and where their vending machines were found. According to the posted sign, we had left too early that morning to find out what breakfast consisted of. The vending machines were well stocked, but no one had change. I found a coffee machine on a counter and freeze-dried coffee in a cabinet. I got it going. Soon the machine began gurgling. "They're going to have to get us a room," Camila said. "But I don't know why we don't just drive back." Everyone else had collapsed in a chair or on the floor. We were filthy and had tracked in plenty of dirt on the carpet and furniture. No one spoke. Sometimes even the pious were too tired to pray. Finally, Officer Taylor came in. She handed out our room cards. "What's the news?" I asked. "We're not hearing back from Fire Command as there's radio trouble. But wash up, we'll bring dinner. Get ready to work tomorrow. We'll be needed." Most of us got up and headed for the rooms. I was glad our room was on the ground floor as I couldn't stand the thought of climbing stairs. Camila tried to edge past me as I unlocked the door. I put a hand to her chest. "Let's take turns being first." She visibly bristled but yielded, and Mindy went into the bathroom, oblivious to the confrontation. I sat on the bed and tried the TV. Each channel was blank. I flipped through every number twice and checked the input button. Camila just stood at the doorway, obviously still perturbed, but her attention was also on the screen. "It's probably the fire," I said. "Lines are down." "Maybe someone else's TV works." I didn't comment. I switched off our set and waited for Mindy to finish with the shower. Dinner took a while to show up. Officer Bird came to the door with grocery bags. He doled out packages of sliced cheese, cold cuts, and a loaf of bread. He set 3 apples on our table before stepping out the door. "That's it?" I asked.
McDonald's is closed, so is the Foster's Freeze. Their power was out. Be glad we have electricity here. The grocery store was blacked out, but I got a manager to let me pick up some food. It's something at least. I'll get everyone a soda from the machine."
I ordered a Coke. He came back 20 minutes later with 3 Pepsis. "Wait," I said before he could leave. "You have to have heard something from the other firefighters or the CHP." He sighed.
"The crew the fire chief was with hasn't reported back. It could be a radio problem. It could be a problem with their vehicle. Nothing to get bothered about. This sort of thing happens."
"But are we safe here? If you can't get any reports on the radio, how do you know the hotel is even a safe place to be?" He looked at me a moment, probably deciding what to say.
"The fire jumped the road that heads back to the highway, and we don't know about any of the alternate routes, so we're staying put."
"But we're supposed to be fighting the fire."
"Not after dark and not without communication. Sit tight. Eat something. We'll rest up and stay the night as long as it looks safe. We'll let you know if we hear anything."
With that, he left. I stepped outside and took a look around. Both officers were busy delivering dinner to the other girls. I wandered down to the lounge and scrounged through the cabinets for condiments. I found a bottle of ketchup, mustard, plastic knives, and some hot sauce. Pickles would have been asking for too much. I returned with the bounty. Camila had started eating her boring sandwich, but paused mid-chew when she saw what I held in my hands. We gathered around the table and assembled a superior meal to those of our neighbors. When it was all fixed up, I let Mindy go and share our condiments. After dinner, I was too wound up to just sleep. All 3 of us migrated outside. The COs kept an eye on us and a few of the others as we congregated at the low brick wall. One girl named Elle said she had heard the lost firefighters had been overtaken by the blaze and had burned to death. Elle was part of Bethany's crew and a true believer. But Elle, Bethany, and Mindy were the only goddess worshippers sitting outside with us. I didn't count myself. Everything Elle said was pure speculation. I shouldn't have responded, but I couldn't help myself. Blame the Pepsi. "Where'd you hear that from?" I asked. "By the county lot. I heard one of the Conservation Corps guys say it." "If that's what happened, the goddess didn't save them, did she?"
"It doesn't work that way,"
Bethany said. She had been quiet until now. "Then how does it work? I haven't heard any of you speaking in tongues or channeling a clear line to the divine. Would she have saved any of them if they were believers?" Bethany's jaw set, and she fixed her gaze on me. She had appeared tired, but now she sat forward. Before she could speak, I said, "Did she actually keep us safe today? I didn't see her put out the fire or stop the wind from blowing all that smoke. On what level do we expect her divine intervention? Is there a body count threshold we haven't yet met?"
"Shut up," Bethany said.
"She can't save everyone," Mindy said. "But who can she save?" I asked. "I'm serious. Don't you think you should wait for her to actually tell us what she wants and who she is before taking a knee? If she's just a visiting alien, we need to find out how to say hello before filling her inbox with our requests for deliverance and safety. Maybe kneeling is an insult in her language. Maybe all we're doing is pissing her off." Before I could say another word, Bethany had me in her grip and wrestled me down to the concrete. She got one arm around my neck and twisted my right arm behind my back. I thought my shoulder would come out of its socket. I couldn't breathe. My face was pressed to the concrete. The pain in my arm clouded out everything else.
"Look at what you're making me do,"
Bethany said softly into my ear.
"You make me crazy with all your talk."
I wanted to cry uncle. My shoulder was in agony. I heard Mindy shout Bethany's name over and over. Where were the COs? I couldn't scream, let alone plead for mercy. The world swam. Black dots spotted my vision.
"Your time is coming,"
she whispered, and then she released me. Pins and needles ran up my arm. I sucked in air and coughed. I got up and leaned on the wall. Mindy and the rest just stared. They knew the boundaries and understood this was between Bethany and me. But part of me felt a pang of resentment that Mindy hadn't helped. Bethany just watched as I recovered. I wanted nothing more than to retreat to my room, but I remained standing, awkward as it was. I wouldn't be the first to leave. Then the lights of the hotel flickered and went out. Chapter 8. Starfall. The signal came from a small machine hurtling through the outer belt of particles near the target solar system. Multiple planets orbited the yellow star. Magus detected the machine and knew it wasn't a natural phenomenon. The system held intelligent life. The biomass on the world they were approaching promised to be rich. Magus's calculations had been perfect, and the long voyage was near its conclusion. Then he noticed the hive wasn't in his thoughts. I am. It's over. The hive is dead. He was awake and in full control. His mind raced, but he kept calm. His next steps would be crucial, as there was much he didn't know. All the other Guardians and Minders in the fleet remained dormant except the Alpha. He was careful not to do anything that would alert her to his new condition. With the fleet's course locked on, they would continue along their path, falling towards their target, a giant linked cloud of ships that would soon arrive at the third telluric world. But why was the Alpha awake? She had no role during the transit. Finally, he dared direct his senses towards her ship. He was weak. If she sensed him, if he had misread the hive's condition, she would know. He resided among a myriad of remnant hive particles. Although the hive consciousness was gone, many of the microscopic organisms still lived on as a mindless mass. The Alpha Guardian's ship was moving along an altered trajectory, and a few others were now turning to follow. It was the slightest adjustment. Hundreds of ships ran along the new vector, leaving Magus and the rest of the fleet behind on their original course. But the hive itself didn't react. More assertive now, he reached out to touch other Minders in his vicinity. It was as if they weren't there. They had either perished or were in a slumber from which they wouldn't wake. The Alpha Guardian had left the majority of the fleet behind, perhaps assuming he too was dead. The tracking of time was difficult, but judging by her distance, she would arrive at the third planet 30 of its days before the ships that followed her. He would have no way of catching up, but he could pursue her if he altered his course. Surely other Minders still lived in the Alpha's smaller fleet, and he kept his distance so as not to alert them. But what had happened? He scoured the remaining ships, but his search uncovered no clue as to what had transpired. The hive consciousness was part of each microorganism, forming a neural network. What one particle sensed was shared with the whole, in all locations, an ability that defied his understanding. But while many of the hive's individual cells still lived in the crevices of his own ship, the guiding intelligence was gone. His mind wasn't prepared for the reality of his situation. The realization he was free paralyzed him. The hive had given him the assignment to get the fleet to its destination. He would have to make a course correction, yet the compulsion to obey had evaporated. The nothing of solitary sleep beckoned. It was the only balm, but to sleep meant to die, and he realized the vast majority of the hive's fleet would overshoot its mark and fly through the solar system and down an infinite trajectory for all eternity. A final madness was what his people had known in their final hours. It would engulf him too. Wake up. His own desire for life was limited. There was nothing around him. Solitude was an unendurable fate, and it would be inescapable as he awaited his own end. But the Alpha Guardian was still alive. She had wrought his world's destruction as surely as the hive had. And now she was heading for their original target, the small world from which the machine with the signal had originated. The hive him was dead, but its particles in the ship around still formed a living machine. He had but to take the reins. The decision didn't take any time at all. He followed.
"What's going on?"
Mindy asked. "It's just the power," I said. "It was bound to happen." Officer Taylor came around with a flashlight and checked on everyone. "Stay put," she said. She went to knock at the motel rooms where the rest of the girls were. Soon everyone was shepherded outside. Again came the head count. We were all present. High up on a far power pole, a transformer popped loudly and spouted a shower of sparks. A snapping ball of lightning played along the electrical line, moving quickly, and popped as it transited the space between two poles. Throughout the hotel complex came several muffled bangs. A few of the extinguished light bulbs in the front of the hotel exploded. Some of the girls screamed. I hit the ground. Electricity arced through the air like fingers reaching into the night. Then, incredibly, the sky lit up. Green, ropey strings flew and twisted miles above the remaining ribbons of smoke still in the air, casting eerie reflections all around us and dancing as if alive. The explosions around us stopped. I looked at the sky. I had never seen anything so beautiful. I got up on my feet and stood transfixed. The other girls were just standing and watching as well. No one spoke. We would have remained there for hours had Officer Bird not begun grabbing each of us by the arm and directing us towards the van.
"Get in,"
he said.
"We can't stay here."
"How do you know the roads are clear?" Officer Taylor asked. This caught my attention.
"We don't know, but if we wait here, we could be in trouble if the fire is shifting. We get in and see how far we can make it."
"We can't risk everyone's life like that." Officer Bird's voice got low.
"We might be risking it by doing nothing."
"How about we take a vote?" I offered brightly. They ignored me.
"Look, we go as far as we can. Stick to the main road only. If it looks bad, we turn around and come back. But this is too weird."
I could barely make out Officer Taylor nodding. "All right, inmates. Get in." Mindy had to be led to the van. She was enthralled with the light show and didn't want to stop watching.
What is it, Bethany?
She asked.
"Northern Lights,"
Bethany said.
"I've seen them before in Vancouver."
"Wait, you're Canadian?" I asked as we filed into the van. "I thought they were all really nice." I didn't get a response. I would later, no doubt. We sat in the dark van as our two correctional officers climbed in. Officer Bird turned the key. Nothing happened. He did it several times before taking the key out, checking it as if it hadn't fit properly into the ignition, and tried again. "Battery?" Officer Taylor said. "Really?" He clicked the headlight switch.
"Lights were off. Nothing else was on to drain it. Hang tight."
He popped the hood and got out. "Can we get out?" I asked. It was hard to see the sky. "No," Officer Taylor said. I pressed my face up to the window and looked up. Others were doing the same. Even through the tinted glass, the twisting lights mesmerized. From the front of the van, we heard Officer Bird muttering in frustration. Finally, Officer Taylor made a command decision and let us get back out. We weren't going anywhere. Apparently, I wasn't moving fast enough as Bethany shoulder-checked me as she climbed past. But it was half-hearted. Even she was taken in by the light show, parting her hair away from her face and gazing skyward. There were a few other hotel patrons standing in the dark parking lot and looking up. Officer Bird made his rounds before coming back.
"No one's car is starting,"
he said. "What does that mean?" I said before anyone else could.
"It means we're staying put."
Maybe the COs were getting soft, or maybe they were likewise in a state of dazed amazement. After considerable whining on our part, they agreed to let us stay outside to watch the show. Officer Bird repeated a few times that he would go find a vehicle or at least get everyone inside, but he too kept watching the lights. He consulted with the out-of-county fire crew. Like everyone else's, their vehicle wouldn't start. They milled about outside their rooms and appeared content to wait it out. The wind from earlier had died down. We actually felt a cooler breeze from the other direction. Maybe it was my imagination, but the air even seemed to be clearing. I dragged a chair out from our room and sat and looked up at the night. Others were doing the same. Bethany and the goddess girls stood with linked hands, but they were mercifully quiet. A restless Officer Bird wandered off a few times. When he returned, I could hear him reporting back to Officer Taylor. There was no news. No lights besides the few flashlights that still worked. Even the hotel's landline phones were out.
A bomb could do this,
I said to Mindy. She had left the Goddess Girls and was now curled up on a lounge chair next to me. She was starting to shiver.
Who would drop a bomb? She asked.
Don't listen to her, Bethany said. She's just trying to get you worked up.
I'm serious, I said. An atomic bomb can ruin electrical equipment, maybe cars and stuff. That's why none of it's working.
Flashlights work, Bethany said.
Maybe the goddess protects flashlights. I imagined her grinding her teeth there in the dark, and the thought warmed me, but not enough. It was getting nippy. I got up to go to bed. The adrenaline of the day had faded, and general weariness had settled in. I was the first to get up to go back to my room. Officer Taylor nodded as I passed her by.
So why do the flashlights work?
She asked quietly.
I have no idea, I said.
We had kept our room door propped open. The key cards weren't working, and the manager had come around to unlock the doors. I had to walk carefully through the room as it was perfectly dark. The TV screen caught the slightest reflection from outside, giving it an eerie glow. I found my bed, climbed in, and pulled the sheet and blanket over me. I could hear Bethany and her crew speaking softly outside. They were praying. God mode activated. I found myself dozing off. It was still night when I opened my eyes. It appeared to be brighter outside, if only a little. I heard whispers and voices, and the first thing that came to mind is that I was about to be attacked. I jumped out of bed and jammed my toe on the TV cabinet. Pain shot up my foot, and I suppressed a curse. No one else was in the room. Neither of the other 2 beds was occupied. I limped out the door. All the girls were standing now and staring upward. The smoke had cleared even more, and the sky was lit up not only with the green whirl of lights, but with dozens of falling stars. Each streaked downward, leaving a white trail behind it. I had never seen so many. When did this start? I asked.
A couple of minutes ago,
Mindy said. I had seen a meteor shower before, and it had been nothing like this. Instead of a quick flash every several seconds or every few minutes, here were multiple fireballs, larger than anything I had ever seen. It made me feel small and helpless. A car pulled into the hotel lot, its rack of fog lights shining bright. Officer Bird rose from a lawn chair beneath the overhang and headed that way. So did others from across the parking lot. Officer Bird had a brief conversation with the driver, who then made a 3-point turn and drove off. Officer Bird shouted something at the vehicle as it sped off. Heavenly spectacle notwithstanding, we were all eager to hear what Officer Bird had learned. He looked angry when he returned.
Guy said the fire reached the main road out and is burning next to the interstate.
How is his car running? Bethany asked.
He said he had it garaged. I tried to get him to give me a lift so I can get us some help, but he refused.
We sit tight until morning, Officer Taylor said. Let's get everyone back in their rooms. Party's over.
We want to stay up, Mindy said. Please.
That's enough of the light show, inmate. We might have a long day tomorrow if we can't get the van started. Now go. We went. There followed another head count while we stood outside our rooms, which seemed to take too long. Counting to 10 couldn't be that hard. Officer Taylor repeated the process, then said, "Where's Camila?" She searched our room. Camila wasn't there. Officer Bird shined his flashlight in my face.
When did you last see her?
She was out here watching the sky like everyone else, I said. She wasn't in the room when I went to sleep. Officer Taylor searched through the other rooms and then went around the building. Her moving flashlight beam soon appeared near the lounge and continued down to the street. She came back out alone and looked inside the van. "Nobody comes back outside unless you're told to," she ordered. Officer Bird got everyone inside while Officer Taylor expanded her search. Mindy and I could hear her calling Camila's name as we sat on our beds in the dark room.
Do you think she ran?
Mindy asked. To go where?
I don't know. Somewhere besides here, I guess.
We had the curtains open, and soon we were hunched over the metal heater by the window looking out. We could see part of the sky. The meteor shower continued unabated. It actually appeared as if the flecks of falling fire were getting larger. One long burning trail tore across the low horizon. The sky flashed like a burst of lightning, converting the night to day for a moment. I could see Officer Bird's silhouette in the parking lot. He was just standing there, looking up with his hand raised to shield his eyes. He stood there motionless for at least 30 minutes until Officer Taylor returned without Camila. They spoke in low tones. Officer Taylor checked her radio and phone one final time before coming around to our room.
"Go to bed,"
she said. We waited until we could hear her climbing the stairs before returning to the window. Chapter 9. Authority Figures. The color blue held little meaning for Magus. It could be indicative of hundreds of physical characteristics of a given world. The visible spectrum proved so limiting in gathering data. What caught Magus's attention about this planet was the abundance of signals. The multitude of radio waves originating from the blue world spoke of intelligence, although Magus failed to comprehend meaning in any of the broadcasts. But he listened and studied, and memorized everything that came his way. He had altered the course of his ship and directed it towards the blue world, leaving the rest of the Hive fleet behind to continue on its doomed trajectory. It was a mathematical near impossibility that it would ever come close to another habitable planet, let alone another star. Magus held out hope, but he knew the chances of stopping the doom that fell towards this world were minuscule. The Alpha Guardian would arrive first, and he had no doubt she would survive planetfall. The small fleet she had taken with her, along with Magus on its tail, would fall into the gravity well some 30 days later. The fleet had scattered enough that the landing would transpire over the course of 2 to 3 days. If this was by design, it demonstrated a level of planning that surprised him. What was she up to? He knew she was powerful and capable of cruelty, and beyond all belief, she had enjoyed the power the Hive had given her. She would arrive as a conqueror, perhaps driven to her own madness during her centuries of service, twisted into believing what the Hive believed. All life belonged to the Hive. She would hunger as they hungered. The only advantage he had was that she didn't know he was coming. Before he got close to the planet, he would disperse his own ship. The component parts would enter the atmosphere at an angle that would burn them up. He would make sure of that. He would input any last course corrections before making preparations to give himself the greatest chance of survival. It would be a close thing. The Hive only needed a small fraction of its whole to establish a foothold on a world, while he had limits to the amount of heat he could endure before expiring. Would the Alpha Guardian guide her swarm safely down? He had to assume she would. First, he had to ensure his own safe arrival. Next, he would have to build defenses against her inevitable attack. Once all the calculations were made, his ship made its final course adjustment before breaking up into the smallest self-sufficient modules the design allowed. He followed close behind the Alpha's fleet as it began its descent. The smaller ships would all operate to protect their passengers, be they minders or Hive particles, as they followed the Alpha Guardian down to the planet. His approach would help conceal him from the Alpha, and as much as he would have preferred to leave all of his ship behind, he had to keep enough of it with him for the last leg of the journey, as he might need the raw material for any final modifications. Officer Taylor had us come outside the following morning. There was no coffee and no donuts. It was surprisingly cold out. A few girls had their bed blankets wrapped around them, making us look like a group of refugees waiting for a handout. Mindy was mummified in her blanket, but still shivering. Mist wafted from our mouths when we exhaled. The light show had continued until a couple of hours before dawn. I had managed to get a little sleep after it disappeared. The smoke had spread and settled in again.
"All right, inmates, we're staying put," she said. "Maybe by this afternoon we'll hear more. Since we don't have a working vehicle, we're going to stay here as long as it remains safe. I talked to some of the locals this morning, and they say the fire isn't anywhere close, and won't threaten us as long as the wind doesn't shift. So that's good news."
"What about breakfast?" Bethany asked. There followed a murmur of agreement.
"We'll bring something up soon."
"Where's Officer Bird?" I asked. Officer Taylor paused. It was brief, but I caught it.
"He's out trying to find us a ride."
But she was hiding something. My mom was a better liar, and I caught her 99% of the time. "And what about Camila?"
"I'm afraid she ran off. Look, I know your rooms are dark and cold, but it's colder outside, so go back in. Maybe we'll figure out how to get the heaters going. So buck up. I'll bring breakfast around soon."
She was distracted and didn't say anything when many of us remained in our doorways looking out at the world. I only saw one other person outside, a county worker who was standing around and smoking. Everything was deathly quiet. I can't remember ever hearing so few sounds. No traffic, no planes, no hum of appliances. I'm not sure if the area had birds, but if so, they were taking the morning off. I looked up. I wasn't the only one. Whatever wonders had passed us by in the night were gone, replaced by the diffuse glow of an obscured sun, which cast the world in a beige light. Except for the choking air, the mystery blackout, a missing girl and CO, and a late breakfast. It was a typical morning. True to her word, Officer Taylor came around with breakfast, if that's what you call a tray full of wrapped danishes. They were sweet and a bit slimy. We were standing around outside, some sitting on the low wall. No one wanted to be inside. "Can I go down to the lounge and make some cold coffee?" I asked.
"It's best you stay here," Officer Taylor said.
"It'll only take a minute. It's right in sight. I'll bring back a couple of urns. It won't be Starbucks quality, but some caffeine would be nice."
"I said no,"
she snapped. This caught everyone's attention. Officer Taylor appeared frayed. I wondered if she had slept. She finished handing out the danishes and reminded us not to go anywhere. She paced about, nervously checking her radio and her phone with no success.
"You just get everyone pissed at you, don't you?"
Bethany asked. "My gift and my curse. Waiting here is crazy. I wonder what's going on." Bethany looked out at the hotel. "Did you do something to Camila?" I asked.
"Are you high?" she asked. "What is wrong with you? She was your roommate."
"Bad things happen to people you don't like, and you don't like very many people." Bethany shook her head. Her tongue licked the front of her teeth.
"You and me are going to have a talk when we get back."
"I'm conversant in many topics." Bethany sneered. The hotel manager came around with a tray of paper cups filled with hot chocolate. The wrinkled old-timer was stooped but had a spring in his step and a tick that made it look like he was trying to wink at me.
"I made a batch with my propane stove. Not right for you girls to be out here and freeze."
It wasn't until I took one of the cups that I realized how cold my hands had gotten. The liquid was blistering, but I blew and sipped as best I could. "Thanks," I said with a scalded tongue. Officer Taylor refused the cocoa and stepped into one of our rooms. Bio break, maybe? I followed on the manager's heels as he headed back towards the office. I had to be careful not to spill as I hurried to keep up. When he noticed me, the manager grunted something and winked. "Any news?" I asked. He started to say something and stammered, finally settling on, "No." Then I noticed his hand gripping the tray. The skin from his thumb and up to his wrist was bumpy, covered in what looked like raised warts. They appeared red and angry like he had been scratching. He saw me look and turned away. "Best you stay at your room and keep out of trouble," he said. I stood there and watched him totter off. My cocoa didn't look so good anymore. A certain restlessness had descended on the group of girls, and it wasn't even late morning. Or maybe it was. Not being able to tell time makes each minute tick by ever so much slower than when you watch a clock. There was little to do but sit and speculate. No one had dice or character sheets. Mindy wasn't interested in my theories on Captain Janeway being a Borg. Someone suggested cards, but no one had any. Even talk about the goddess failed to spark any real conversation. Everyone was nervous, including me. So we watched Officer Taylor pace about. Officer Bird hadn't shown up, and there was little she could do without leaving us. Across the way, the county workers were pulling on their boots. They looked like they were gearing up for something. Officer Taylor went and spoke with them. Then the crew marched through the parking lot, leaving their van and equipment behind. Officer Taylor returned and said, "They're heading for Highway 80. They say they'll pass along that we're here to whoever they can contact." "More Danishes for us," I said. Officer Taylor considered us all for a moment. "I'm going to talk to the manager and see what he can do as far as getting us some lunch. Otherwise, I'll walk down to the grocery store. I'll be back in an hour. Everyone is to stay put. I can't force you to remain in your room, but you're not to leave. Anyone who does gets written up. You're safe here. These are unusual circumstances and your cooperation is noted. Do you understand me?" We all agreed. She lingered, appearing to be unsure of her own decision. But her 10 wards were a-watchin', and one mustn't show weakness in front of the inmates. Besides, it was her job to care for us, and I wanted lunch.
"Does she have a gun?"
Mindy asked as Officer Taylor walked down the driveway and out of sight.
"Have you ever seen any of the COs carrying one?"
Bethany said. "She'll be fine," I said. But no, none of the COs carried firearms, at least not at our facility. If they ever needed firearms while guarding us, it was because something was seriously wrong. Something was bugging me. Something besides the itching lump on my own arm and the blisters on my tongue. Then I realized I was alone with Bethany, and that meant she could now murder me without anyone standing in her way. But she went back to her room upstairs, not paying me the slightest mind. By best guess, it was noon. We didn't have a watch or working clock among us, and even a sundial wouldn't have worked as the smoke was a thickening blanket above us, mixing into an overcast that obscured the sun. My stomach grumbled as I doodled on a pad of hotel stationery with a black ink pen. What in my mind was a badass chick with a pair of swords was turning into a victim of genetic testing gone wrong, with overly long arms, 2 short legs, and large breasts. At least the swords looked awesome. Then something happened that made me forget all about my sketch. From the back of our block of rooms came 3 of the boys from the juvie work crew. One of them was Bill. Or Billy.
"Ladies,"
Billy said. He held a bulging blue cloth grocery bag. Scotty's produce and groceries read the side of the bag. One of the other boys had an identical bag. The third had a bottle of J&B scotch. "What are you guys doing here?" I asked. Even Mindy appeared slightly alarmed. I looked around. Officer Taylor was nowhere to be seen. No one was.
"They had us at a campground about a mile from here," Billy said. "We thought we'd take a look around."
"Your CO's okay with that?" Billy ignored my question. He tossed his head towards Mindy.
"Hey, it's Mindy, right? What do you say we get out of here? Any of you are welcome to come."
Bethany was coming down the stairs. She didn't look happy at seeing the boys either, but she rarely smiled. Maybe it was a glandular thing. "You shouldn't be here," Bethany said. "You're going to get us all in trouble."
"We're just doing what we have to do to survive. We're going to go look for a ride and get out of this dump."
He looked too cocksure, too confident. Why was he so certain that our COs weren't around? "What did you do?" I asked.
"What are you talking about?"
"You know what I mean. Walking in here without a worry. Have you seen Officer Taylor or Officer Bird? What about your COs?" He rolled his eyes.
"The world is ending out there, and you want to wait around a stupid hotel? That's fine. Mindy."
He held his hand out. She looked at me, then at Bethany. He scowled when she refused to make up her mind.
"Any of you? Don't you see what's going on? Last night, no cars working. The bombs have gone off. Our debt to society is paid because there is no society. You wait here long enough and you'll find out."
"I'm staying,"
Mindy said. He raised his hand, offer withdrawn. "I'll go," a girl named Monique said. Monique was one of Bethany's girls, and Bethany looked at her incredulously. "Sorry, Beth, but he's right. We can't just wait here forever." "It's not forever," I said a little too loud. "It's only been a few hours."
"You'll be safe if you stay here,"
Bethany said to Monique. When it was clear she wasn't going to change her mind, Bethany added, I'll pray for you. 2 other girls joined Monique. Bethany took a step closer to Billy. He had something under his shirt tucked into his belt, and now his hand went to it. She paused. Billy was afraid of her. He wasn't as dumb as I thought. Beth, I said. Let them go. Billy's hand remained at his belt as if he were striking a pose. He looked around at the rest of us and grinned. It seemed like his expression was an attempt at being predatory, a new face he was trying on. But if it was a gun under his belt, he held all the power and he knew it. I felt tension creep up from the pit of my stomach. But Billy just said, You ladies have yourself a good afternoon. He stepped over to Mindy and swiped his finger along her cheek. She winced. The 3 boys and 3 girls headed down the parking lot towards the road. The manager had come outside and stood there staring as they passed. Billy walked towards him and said something. The old man retreated back into the office. How far can they make it? Mindy asked. Don't even think about it, I said. That's not the company you want to keep. They're not going to make it far, Bethany said. And if Officer Taylor doesn't come back, we're going to have to deal with them. I searched Bethany's face for any indication she was joking. She wasn't. Mindy and the other 3 girls were silent. Is this place even safe? I asked. Bethany looked back at the hotel rooms. Our doors were propped open. As safe as any place else, I guess. I'm sure we could do better if we have to leave, but that means either walking, finding a vehicle that runs, or breaking into someone's home. I'm guessing that's what they did. I'm sure not everyone around here evacuated. People are going to defend their homes. Bethany nodded. So we stay put for now. I couldn't argue with that. Chapter 10. Groceries. The Alpha Guardian knew Magus was there. Even though his senses were awash with input coming from the blue world, he could hear her displeasure. She tried channels of communication she might have used while the hive lived. He had severed these, yet still he felt her there, reaching for him, calling his name. But she could no longer access his mind. Now there was nothing she could say that would make him drop his guard. His mute response irritated her. She grew angry at his presence. The raw power of her telepathic force was palpable. He did not fully understand the concept of joy as humans know it, but he felt glad at her discomfort. His race had possessed a right to live, and that right had been stripped away to feed the hive. But the Alpha Guardian had taken pleasure in his corruption. That he should stop her progress was fitting, if not for the inhabitants of this new world, then out of justice for the others who had been destroyed. Plus, a question burned in his mind. Why? Why would she, another intelligent creature, pick up the mantle of the hive when it had died off during their transit? He clung to the riddle. It gave him more reason to continue on. He would find her and learn the answer, before ensuring this would be the final world she would ever visit. I'm hungry, Mindy said. It was the 8th time she had said it, not that I was counting. Bethany's jaw tightened. We're not going anywhere. We sat together outside, having dragged our chairs into the lot by the van. By some unspoken agreement, none of us wanted to be surprised by the boys or anyone else, and the rooms were dark even with the shades open. The other girls prattled on. A serious case of the nerves ran through the group. I kept my eyes peeled for any sign of either of our COs. Maybe the manager will have something, I said. If not, I'll try the vending machines and see if I can get anything out of them. Bethany gave me a nod. No one volunteered to go with me. I got it. Even leaving the close proximity of our room meant a possible reprimand. Like the COs were waiting just around the corner for one of us to try something. Including Camila, 4 girls had snuck off. The boys were in the wind, so who would freak out if I went to buy a Snickers bar? I walked down to the office and tried the door. Locked. I knocked, but no one answered. Through the glass, I could see a white brick lobby and a stand of brochures for local attractions. A long brown counter ran from wall to wall. Everything beyond lay in shadow. The lounge with the vending machines was attached to the back of the building. The door there was propped open, but instead I went around to the front. The main street ran either way past the large Best Western sign. There were houses and a handful of businesses, all dark. Pine trees grew tall on most of the properties, and gravel driveways were the norm. Ash lay on the asphalt like a dusting of snow. I was out of sight of the other girls. There was little to see. Several vehicles were parked on the side of the road. Nothing moved, and it was quiet. Maybe it was my imagination, but the air smelled cleaner. The sky was still white, but the layer of smoke was thin and rising. This did little for my nerves, though. I felt exposed, like a prey animal coming out of its den. But nothing and no one was watching. Everyone was gone. But where? We hadn't driven all the way through town. The Best Western was situated just past the sign that read French Meadows Pop 530. I knew which way to walk if I wanted to head to the highway. This meant the grocery store and the Foster's Freeze were the other way. I started walking, alone, leaving the safety of the group. Even the thought of Bethany being alongside me would be comforting. "This is what happens in horror movies," I said out loud. The smell of something cooking reached me. I was almost used to the persistent fire smell, but this came on much stronger. Something savory. Someone somewhere in this little hamlet was doing barbecue. I hoped it was barbecue. From somewhere came a high-pitched noise, a shriek. It was brief, and I wasn't able to tell what direction it came from. I looked about. Maybe it was a bird or a car sound, or maybe I hadn't heard it at all. The sound didn't repeat. Keep moving, I thought to myself. I walked past a black metal fence, its bottom wound with chicken wire. Green weeds grew shin-high around the front of a house. A muscular-looking dog launched itself towards me, stopped only by the gate. It started barking as it bounced off the fence, just on the other side of the chicken wire. I jumped back, surprised. I walked faster as the dog persisted, continuing even after I was no longer in view. Scotty's and the Foster's Freeze were across the road from each other, with a mechanic's shop, a post office, and a small gas station comprising the rest of the downtown area. A handful of cars were parked in front of the small grocery store. The dog behind me was still going off, and now I wanted it to be quiet. I needed to listen. A brief laugh echoed from nearby, perhaps from behind the Foster's Freeze. The sound was joyless, reminding me more of a cry of pain. I didn't hear it again, and I wasn't going to call out for whoever it was to come out. If it was Billy and the boys were messing with me, they would have to come and get me. I felt anxious, knowing I should have stayed put, that maybe something was happening to the girls and I had abandoned them. There were only 6 of us left. Felons were out on the streets, and who knew what sickos lived in French Meadows? Even with the electricity out, no doubt guns still worked, and everyone in these parts seemed to have them. One of the vehicles by the market was a Placer County Sheriff Department cruiser. I looked inside. None of the lights or the laptop computer attached to the central console appeared to have power. I was going to step inside the store and discover my 2 COs talking to the deputy, having been waylaid by some other emergency or distraction. My showing up would be a wrench in their plans, and I was going to get cuffed and sent to some distant juvie facility for hard cases. At least I wouldn't be here. A closed sign hung prominently in the window closest to the door. The automatic sliding door was halfway open, wide enough to get through. But it was dark inside, and I heard no voices. Beside a row of metal carts and blue plastic baskets was a hanging rack of cloth bags for purchase, blue with the store logo printed on the side. The same bags that the boys were carrying. They had been here, and they had gone inside. I was about to walk into a crime scene. A fresh wave of doubts about the wisdom of my being here asserted itself. Turn around, walk back, and wait. There was food in the vending machines, and Mindy could settle for some peanuts and chocolate-covered raisins. We could prove to the COs and the world we were good girls who knew how to follow directions. Someone inside the store moaned. It was a sound of pain. I stepped through the doors. My eyes needed a moment to adjust. I could make out 3 checkout lanes and tall, narrow aisles fully stocked. Hello? I didn't want to get shot by sneaking up on a trigger-happy cop. I'm coming into the store. I waited. The moan came again, now more of a weakened groan. It was the kind of melodramatic sound my mother would make to get me to ask how she was doing, especially after one of her long days of being shut inside the house and sharing her demons on Facebook. It must be exhausting being a parent. I walked past the aisles, looking down each. The one with the produce was the widest. I found myself rolling my feet, not wanting my footfalls to be heard, but my shoes squeaked on the tile. Is anyone in here? If it was the deputy down there, they would have responded. I passed through the produce section, my eyes glued to the back of the store. Something back there was casting a weird glow. The dim light was low to the ground, shining out from a propped-open swinging door. The green illumination was not helping me stay calm. As I got closer, I made out the source of the light. Dozens of glow sticks were laid out on the ground. Someone was kneeling in the middle of them. It was Officer Byrd, hunched forward and kneeling, hands clasped together, rocking back and forth ever so slightly. Officer Byrd? I said. He didn't respond. Past him, a short hallway went to a closed office door. I saw a time clock and a wall rack for time cards. The back room was a large, cramped storage area. As I got closer to Officer Byrd, I made out people lying about just beyond the ring of glow sticks. I guessed there were a dozen men and women, but it was hard to see in the weird light. I didn't see blood on the floor, but something had happened. I was too scared to get closer. One of them moaned. It was Officer Taylor. She lay closest to Officer Byrd and was on top of another body. The hand of the body she lay upon twitched. They were alive, or at least 2 of them were. I started forward, and Officer Byrd looked up at me. His face had something on it. Tiny raised bumps lined his mouth and face, and his eyes were almost crusted over. The breakout spread around to his left ear, and down his neck. It was on his hands as well.
Who's there?
He asked. It's me, Deanne. Mr. Byrd, what's happening? What's wrong with you? He shook his head.
It's okay, child. All we have to do is listen.
He reached for me. The bumps were growing on his palm and fingertips. A pustule had grown at the base of his thumbnail and the nail had detached, but it was still connected by a thin web of tissue. I recoiled. As he pawed at the air near me, I realized he couldn't see.
Where are you? All we have to do is listen, and she'll answer. She calls us even now. All we have to do is pray.
I couldn't prevent a gasp from escaping my lips. He heard it and grabbed for me. I jumped back, and both my feet went skidding off the glow sticks. I fell. Officer Byrd was crawling on all 4s towards me. I backpedaled and scrambled away as fast as I could. From behind him, the others in the storage room all began to groan or cough or scream, as if they shared some common agony. Stay away from me! He collided with a cart stacked with boxes of apples and oranges and paused to feel his way past. I managed to get to my feet and ran towards the front of the store.
Deanne,
he called.
Come back.
Others in the back room took up the cry. Deanne, Deanne, Deanne. I made it outside and charged headlong into the street. The light from the sky above was a welcome thing. I couldn't get enough space around me where I could see and know that nothing was close enough to grab me. I didn't know which way to go. Confusion and panic filled my mind. Then I heard the dog. It was still barking. I ran that direction and kept running, past the angry animal, heading for the hotel.